The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts, guests, or callers, and do not necessarily represent the opinions of WTBR-FM, its management, other producers, or sponsors.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsville with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsville. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. So today we have with us Patricia Molina, a Pittsville resident. She's a licensed realtor and a graduate student, and she is on an exciting journey toward finding her true calling in life. Welcome, Patricia. Let's get started.
Thanks, Roberta. Thanks for having me here.
You are so welcome. All right, now I have to ask, I know sometimes people like variation. So do you ever go by Pat or you always like Patricia?
So I like Patricia.
Okay.
People do call me Pat, but Patricia is my go-to.
And when they call you Pat, what do you like?
Yes. Like my son would say, I cringe.
Yes.
So It's funny because some of my best friends growing up call me Pat.
Right.
Still.
But isn't that something, though? I feel like, do they get a pass?
They get a pass. And, you know, as we get older, they've realized that I don't like it too much, so they try to correct themselves, but, you know, still slips out sometimes.
Right.
But I'm like, that's okay.
Right.
I've been Pat for a long time to them.
Right. I get it. I feel like the people in our past, they know us from a different chapter. And so, like, for me, my first name is Roberta, but my middle name is Tamika. So I have people who know me as Tamika and who only call me Tamika. And then people who know me by Roberta, they're like, who's Tamika?
Right. Yeah.
So I totally understand. All right, but so tell me a little bit, because you have an interesting story. You have an immigrant experience story, and you were born in Honduras.
Yeah. So I moved here when I was 7 years old. I was born in the capital. My mom came to the United States first to kind of find a place for my sister and I. I have an older sister. So we stayed in Honduras. She came up here, you know, why everybody comes up for a better life, better opportunities.
Right.
Honduras is, you know, struggling right now economically. The people are struggling socially. So 33 years ago, you know, my mom decided to come up here and find a life for us. She ended up meeting people from, you know, the border all the way up here, and she landed here. With my dad.
Yep.
So after, you know, they bought a house, they settled, and then my sister and I came up here.
So when you were still in Honduras, were you just like with extended family?
Yeah, so we were with this woman who we called Abuela Carmen.
Okay.
I don't remember too much. I think it was, you know, a stressful part of my life, the transition that we went through. So I think naturally I don't have a lot of memories. The memories that I have are kind of like in the house with my sister, with the people, but you know, country-wise, community-wise, I don't have a lot of memory of what that looks like, what that felt like.
Really?
No. So my sister does. You know, my sister and I have these conversations often, and she'll say, do you remember this? Do you remember? And I'm like, I have no recollection of what you're saying.
That is, wow. I mean, I came to this country, so I was born in Kingston, Jamaica.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, and my family immigrated to the United States when I was 2, and we settled in the Bronx. And similar thing, like my grandmother and my had come up before, and so, you know, normally you have family that come up before and they kind of settle, and then they bring you up.
Yep.
And so I have zero memories. I mean, I actually hunger for a memory or two. I look at pictures when I was still in Jamaica when I was little, and I'll have to ask my mom. I'll say, like, what was I doing there? What was I, you know, how did I speak? What did I say? Because I'm so interested in that version of myself. But 7, I feel like, wow, you definitely have that perspective of life there, but then you're so cognizant of life when you come to America. What was your first take when you first got here? Everything is different. Weather's different.
Right.
Landscape.
So, you know, I think we landed in Texas. No, I think we landed in Florida. And I remember the airport. I don't remember the airport there. I just remember landing in America. It was a huge building. There was so many people. And I don't think I was exposed to that number of people ever up until I got off that airplane and I saw the people. I remember the floors, which is, so basic.
Yeah.
But I don't know what my floors looked like in Honduras, and I don't know what my house looked like, but I remember the shiny floors and all the glass windows. And that was my take, like, wow, this is amazing. My mom would send things to us, pictures, I think magazines, and, the Big Apple. And I think in my head, I was like, this is it, this is America, and it's just an airport. But it was huge to me.
Yes.
And then I remember pulling up and seeing our house. I was like, wow, we have a house, it was amazing.
Yes.
So I think at that time I probably was comparing it to where I came from, and it was just so amazing. But now that 30 plus years have gone by, I don't have memories of what it was like leaving, what it looked like. But I do remember thinking, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm in America.
Yes. Well, tell me how, just settling in, how did you find that at home, your home culture, there were remnants of the culture that you grew up in? Did you have pictures in the home? I know for me growing up, I felt like I had a dual experience. I had a Jamaican experience at home and with the people that were around, and then you go into the broader setting. And so I was acutely aware of my Jamaican heritage. Did you have the same growing up with this dual identity?
So I struggled with my identity because we moved to North Adams, so that's where my parents bought a house. And I was one of a few Spanish-speaking people in school, so I struggled with wanting to speak Spanish because it was different. Nobody that I knew spoke Spanish. In the house, we went to church. We did family things. My parents worked. We only spoke in Spanish. My parents love their culture, so there are pictures on the wall, of our flag, of the Honduran emblem. So in the home, it was very much my culture, my Hispanic culture. Outside of the home, it was really difficult because I didn't know anybody that spoke Spanish.
Right.
And when I started school, I was the only non-English speaking person, which was really difficult for me. So, for a long time, I struggled with, I don't want to be Spanish.
Right.
I don't want that culture because it's so different as a little girl. But I lived it every day, in the morning. And then when I came home from school, my sister and I spoke Spanish.
Right.
But outside of the home, I didn't want to identify as a Spanish girl because it was so different and I felt like an outsider.
So you almost learned at that time in your life almost the elements of code switching.
Yes.
Because you knew instinctively what to say around certain folks. And I think that's the term that people use today when you go into certain environments and you have to sort of adopt a different persona to fit in, so to speak. And I think as children, certain circumstances like this, it makes you say, okay, this is what I need to do not to be othered.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. And I didn't speak English when I moved here, so it was only Spanish. So I don't know how it came about, but I had this amazing tutor, Leslie, we still are in contact with, my sister and I. She lives down south somewhere. But without her, it's not like today where we have ELL programs in the buildings where we have support for immigrants who come and don't speak the language. Back then it was just me and my sister and this woman who would tutor me and tutor my sister. And then you kind of just put in a classroom. This was early 90s. You're put in a classroom and it's full immersion. There was no ELL class. There wasn't a teacher that I could talk to besides Leslie. And she became part of my family, over time because she was the one who was teaching me English. My parents didn't know English. They do now. They can...
Yes.
They've been here a long time. But even as little girls, my mom would say, what does that mean to us?
Yes.
So, and I see it in I work in the school department. Well, and I see it now, young kids are learning how to translate.
Can we just talk about the benefits of being bilingual and multilingual? Because there is, first of all, I wish I was like fluent in Spanish. I mean, I took 7 years of Spanish, like middle school and high school. And I think I have a basic understanding, and I can kind of hold my weight.
You can get by.
I can get by, but I have such admiration for people who are bilingual and multilingual, because your brain, I don't think people realize, to be able to convert a language and go back and forth, that requires a high level of skill. And I feel like the pendulum has swung where now people fully appreciate it, whereas maybe before people were like, no, it's just maybe one standard language. Now people understand the benefits of it. So I got to ask you, are you still fluent?
I'm still fluent.
Yes.
And it's funny because I talk to a lot of Spanish-speaking people who are immigrants who don't know English. They're always like, where are you from? Because you have an American accent. And it's like, well, I've been here 30 years, but I can talk social work. I can talk real estate.
Wow.
But I do have an accent because I'm very Americanized,
right,
for lack of a better term. I speak English every single day. The only time outside of work, per se, that I speak Spanish is with my mom and dad.
Of course.
And even with my dad, we speak English.
Really?
Yeah. So, he'll try. I think he notices it, so he'll throw in some Spanish words. But for the most part, he speaks English to my sister and I. My mom is strictly Spanish.
Good.
Strictly Spanish.
Yeah.
So that's really the only time. And for, my whole education, that's the only time I spoke Spanish. And when you're a teenager, you don't sit and have full conversations with your parents. No. So it was very minimal, at that. So
I find it so beneficial, and I wish I had that. I feel like, within our Jamaican culture, we have patois, but patois is a dialect, so it's a variation of English, and depending on how well versed you are in patois, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be able to understand, because it's definitely something that if you're in the culture, you understand and and so.
So is that the native language?
I would say that in Jamaica, it's still, because it was like a Commonwealth and everything, so there's the whole English, Queen's English kind of thing as the standard, but patois is a dialect that people speak. So it goes between. You have people who strictly will speak just like this, with an accent. And then you have people who their go-to is patois. And it's great. It really is. It has all elements within it. And for me, my great-grandmother, when she came to this country, that's all she spoke. So I was able to understand certain things. And even when I went to school, I pronounced words differently. And people would say, well, why are you pronouncing it that way? And again, that sense of being othered, I became acutely aware of certain things that I said. And I think over time, I muted that. I pushed it down because no one wants to be othered. Right. But now as you get older, you kind of realize that the specialness is in the difference. Right.
And you embrace that when you reach a certain age. And,
exactly.
For me, I went to school in North Adams, K through 12, and after I graduated from high school, I stayed in the Berkshires. I did some traveling. I've been to California, Texas, drove around a bunch of states, but I always make it back here.
Why? Have to ask.
So I feel like North Adams didn't have what I needed.
Okay.
Or maybe it's because that's where I learned who I was. I didn't think there was culture. I didn't think there was anything here for me. I didn't think there were people like me. So I kept trying to leave, but then I came back and I moved to Great Barrington, and I was exposed to a different type of life.
Yes.
Because, we're in Berkshire County, but all these towns are so different, and they offer so much different experiences within the same county. And I fell in love with Great Barrington. The culture that's there, the arts, what they try to bring into the city, the tourism, and how they try to attract people from other areas. And I really liked that.
Okay.
So I was there up until I had my son,
okay,
which was, I moved here before I had my son, but it was like up until 2008. So I spent a lot of time in South County.
Okay.
and I started to appreciate culture, and I think when I started to understand that culture isn't a bad thing, that being different isn't a bad thing, and that there are people from other places that are different like me, you know, because I did feel different for a long time. So we, you know, my parents and I and my sister would go to New York. We have family there. So to me, that was like where the culture was. I didn't realize it was here. So like I feel like inside I'm a city girl. I'm not a country girl. I tried, but it's not me. You know. And I think all these little elements that Berkshire County has are city-like. You know, we may not have, you know, 1 million people living here in the crowded streets and the transportation that the cities offer, but all of the different cultures and experiences that one can have, you find in a city, and outside of a city, and I think it's here,
absolutely,
and it's comfortable for me, and I like it, and I like living in an area where I don't have rats, and I don't have someone...
Can we just speak on it, Patricia?
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, seriously.
Right.
I feel your vibe on the city thing, because I, too, am a city girl at heart. I mean, you know, growing up in the Bronx, I mean, the boroughs, taking public transportation. I mean, I took public transportation when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12. I mean, I remember going on the subway with family at an early age. So I was accustomed to taking the subway, and then taking the bus by myself, taking the train by myself. The things that my kids probably, I wouldn't let them do now, because I'm like, what? But when you grow up in that environment, you have those sensibilities. It's just a part of you. You have street smarts, you have an awareness, and you move differently. But I do realize that, again, as you get older too, the things that you gravitate toward, the things that you want. I mean, I like the hustle and bustle, but I also like to step back.
Right, and have your own private
have my
space.
own space. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. And, you know, my mom never drove. She still doesn't drive, refuses to get behind. So we took the bus everywhere. So to me, you know, I was comfortable with taking the bus. We'd go to New York and get on the train, and I was comfortable with that. So like you know, I'm okay with it. And I go to New York, and people are like, what do you mean am I scared? You know, I'm scared of the bears in Berkshire County more so than walking down the street in New York.
If you could see my face right now, because that is so true. When I go walking, I'm like looking around, and they're like, what are you looking around? I'm looking around to make sure an animal doesn't jump out at me.
Yeah.
That's what
there was a short time that I lived in Alford. You know, I really have bounced everywhere in Berkshire County, and I lived in Alford. It's this little town, you know, right in South County. Loved the house, but every night I was so scared to leave my house, because I was like, what if a fox gets me? What if there's a raccoon? You know, those are the thoughts that go through my head. And then moved to Pittsfield, and I'm like, I don't care if I live, you know, in the projects, quote unquote. I'm safe. If I scream, someone's going to hear me. If I'm in the middle of the woods and a bear catches me, you know, I'm gone.
That is the truest line I've ever heard, because that is so true. I mean, you make me think about growing up when we used to watch, like, what is it? Not Friday the 13th, Jason.
Oh, right.
And remember, everything happened at Crystal Lake.
Right.
In the woods.
Right. Where no one can
know. Exactly.
Right.
So you learned when you were in the city, you stay away from the woods.
Right.
Because that's where stuff happens.
Yep,
That's
exactly. Right. And I like the woods, and I like sunsets, and I like trails, but no.
Yeah. So tell me, in Pittsville, you found your way to Pittsville, and you sort of alluded to just a little bit about the fact that the diversity of the city, the fact that it has this energy on a different level. What else do you love about Pittsville?
I think for me, that's it.
That's it. All right.
I love everything that this city has to offer. I mean, you just went to Ghana,
yes,
right? And you know, how many cities can offer that to someone? And I know it was a program, but I don't think these programs are possible without the support of the city, without the city backing you up and saying, yes, we support this. Because there are a lot of places in America that people don't have this opportunity. I mean, Berkshire County and Pittsfield were so good about celebrating culture. Yeah. You know, we embrace that. Yeah. Like Festival Latino, I know it doesn't happen in Pittsfield, but you see the signs, you know, and it's happening, and you know, there's more immigrants coming into the area of all backgrounds, you know, from Africa, from Europe, from Central America, from Puerto Rico. I know that's part of the States, but you know, people are just gravitating here, and I love that because I want to live and I want to be in a place that supports people and that embraces people, because I don't watch the news like I used to. I'm trying to stay away from news and politics. But there's so many places in America that don't embrace culture and don't offer the support to people who want to embrace their culture. You know, there's thousands of cultures that aren't in this area, but I feel comfortable and confident that if somebody from a country came here and said, I want to do this, I think the city would support it, and I think people would embrace it. You know, I think racism and prejudice is very much alive, but I think in this community, I think we're trying to fight against that. And
absolutely.
And you know, that's what I love, and it's not a particular place, though. As a whole, you know, I like going to certain restaurants. We have so many diverse restaurants here. You know, it's really becoming a little city. It's not just pizza and spaghetti. You know, if you want Thai food, there's a place.
Absolutely.
You know, if you want Italian, if you want your pizza, of course that's here too. But there's other restaurants that are popping up and people are just coming here, and that's what I like. That's what I've, you know, that city girl in me kind of likes all those things. You know, you can go to a lake. I do love sunsets, as scary as they are after the sun goes down. I do love sunsets, and I do love, you know, going out for a bike ride, and that's all here. You know, you don't have to travel. Everything is here.
Isn't that it, though? I think that proximity, the fact that everything is, I mean, you can leave work. You literally can leave your job and say, I want to go on a bike ride, or I want to go by the lake and, like you said, catch a sunset, or maybe even just relax.
Or I want to catch a show.
Exactly.
I want to listen to music this Friday night.
People in the city have to take a train out to do that. They're going wherever. I mean, some people, you know, they go to Long Island, or some people say, okay, I'm going to go to the Berkshires, wherever. We have that here, and that is the beauty of it. And I think sometimes when you're in it, it's very easy to lose sight of all that you have. And I always tell folks that the way to maximize your view is sometimes to leave, because when you leave, you have a full appreciation of what you always had.
I truly believe that.
It's this truth. When we moved here 12 years ago, I remember, because New York City natives, but our jobs took us further and further, you know, upstate New York, and that's a whole thing in and of itself. It is certainly not New York City, and so I had a hard time. I had a hard time at times because it was a different pace, a different energy. And I remember when we were moving to Pittsfield, and I looked at Pittsfield, and I thought, oh, it looks so charming. And I was struck by the New England charm. But I feel like, again, it offers the best of both worlds. If I want a little city, I can get it. And if I want a little rural, I can get it. I can get what I'm looking for.
And not only can you get it here, but then it's a day's drive away if you want the real Big Apple experience, or Boston, or the ocean. You can take off 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the ocean if that's what you want, and then come back home and sleep in your bed. You know, we are. I think this is probably the best part of the country to live in. We don't have hurricanes, we don't have tornadoes, we don't have earthquakes.
Okay, Patricia, don't jinx us, please.
I know.
All right. But you're right. We are blessed to live in a beautiful part of the country. And I think Pittsfield, being the capital seat of the Berkshires, we just have a great vantage point. And there's so much happening in Pittsfield. And like you said, we have so many great people coming into the city. So I think once that happens, what you're going to see is, again, that flourishing of culture, right? And I think it's important that people are exposed, because that's the experience I had growing up in New York City. I grew up around everyone, and there's something to be said for when you have that exposure. You're comfortable, you're comfortable with people, and you know how to navigate and move through spaces.
And that's how I feel.
So
I like it.
Yes. All right, so you got to tell me, you're in a city now that you love, and you are defining what you want to do in life. I think you've once said that you are a people person, that you like people. What does that mean to you? Because I know to be a people person can mean different things to folks. So for you, what does it mean?
So I feel like that's such a hard question to answer. So when I say I'm a people person, I will talk to anybody.
Okay.
I will listen to anybody. And I just love hearing people's stories. I don't get tired of it. I don't get sick of it. And I think that's why I'm in the 2 careers that I'm in, is because I just love being around people. And of course we all have our days where we don't want to be around people. But in general, I just gravitate to people who want to share their story, who want to talk, who just, and the people who don't. Like, I just feel like I'm comfortable with people.
Now I have to ask you, especially considering how you grew up and just feeling always that you were trying to create your own lane. Do you think that this sort of your disposition at this time is almost a way of creating something that you may not have had when you were growing up?
Totally. And I think that all the time. So I think I probably saw the quote online, but I always say, be the adult that you needed as a child. And I truly believe that, I lacked a lot of things. My parents were great. My sister was great. My extended family was great. But I did lack, a lot of adult connections, being an immigrant child who couldn't communicate with a lot of adults. And, they tried. It's not to say they were bad teachers, but it's difficult.
It's hard.
It's difficult forming a close relationship with people that you don't know and people who don't speak your language. And, it's a huge barrier. So I think for me, I just try to be open to everybody.
Right.
And whoever you are.
Right.
One of my biggest philosophies is I'm going to talk to you the same way that I talk to the CEO of a business or the mayor.
Right.
Like, it's to me, we're all people. We're all the same thing. So you might have, more education than me, and you might have more money, and you might have better experiences or more, but we're still all just the same people. We all still feel the same. We all go through the same emotions. Yes. We all go through heartbreaks. We all go through loss. And I just feel like when I say I'm a people person, give me any people. Like, everybody's my people.
I like that.
Up until, you're mean to me, then you're not my people. But everybody is my people. Like, if you're willing to share any part of yourself with me, or even be in the same space as me, you're my people. Like, I think that's me.
Yeah, that's sort of the philosophy I have too, Patricia. I really give everyone gets a blank slate, and I feel that as well. I mean, until you show me a reason, and at that point, I think you have to. Then we protect ourselves. We protect ourselves emotionally, but because we realize that could be a source of hurt. But I think other than that, we realize that it really is about showing that kindness to everyone, just across the board, because it doesn't cost a thing. Kindness doesn't cost a thing. We don't have to fancy it up. We don't need the big money.
Right.
It really is just about how do you show up in the world.
Right. Exactly.
How do you show up? So I gotta ask, now knowing your background, this way that you engage with others, your one of your first jobs was at Hillcrest.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So that was my first real job.
Okay.
Before that, I did bartending. I worked in restaurants, but I am the type of person that just goes with the flow. Like, whatever comes my way. So when I started with Hillcrest, it was in 2004. I was living in Great Barrington. I was living in a farm. The guy that I was dating was a farmer and lived a mile from Hillcrest.
Okay.
And I've always, because of my background and because my experiences, I've always been drawn to children and making sure that they have an adult that they can talk to. So I would often ride my bike or go for walks, and I always saw these kids. I'm like, ooh, what is that place? Is that a school? So I started asking questions about the building. Yeah. It looked like an apartment complex to me. It's like 3 little houses in a little school building. So I was curious, like, what is that place?
Yeah.
You know, so people often walk, you know, down the street in Great Barrington. So I said, what's going on there? You know, kids are always playing basketball. Like, is it a school? And someone said, no, it's an alternative school. And I, at that point, had no idea what that even meant. I was like, an alternative school? And they're like, well, you know, and they explained it was a residential. And I was like, what do you mean residential?
Right.
So in my life, I didn't even know the concept of kids being taken away from home or leaving home or the you know, all the number of reasons why kids end up in a residential placement.
Right.
So that was brand new to me. I got on the phone right away. I called Hillcrest. I said, I want to work there. I applied and I started working. And I was there up until I was 8 months pregnant. And
Wow.
Yeah. So in 2009.
Wow.
So I loved it. I loved the population.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I learned, like, this is my calling. Working with youth who struggle is my calling. And I loved it. And the only reason I left was because I was pregnant and I was going to have a baby any day. But yeah, that's how it started. And I was primarily in Great Barrington for those 5. I think it was actually longer. I might have started sooner than that. So I was there for about 5-6 years. You know, and I worked residential shift, which is a 3 to 11. I worked as an academic staff, as a teacher's aide. God bless you know, Sue Wall, who I felt like was my mentor. When I was there, she was an English teacher. Well, you know, people at Hillcrest do everything. They're just not a one subject teacher.
Right.
They are mentors, they're teachers, you know, they fill the role of a loved one.
Right.
So that's really where I fell in love with working with children. And I knew at that point, Hillcrest introduced me to children need our help. And if we have the abilities and the skills to do it, do it.
Do you remember or recall any special moments that really stayed with you from your time there that you can share? Because I know it can be confidential in many ways, but maybe something that struck you that just really was like an aha moment.
I think it's every day.
Wow.
I think it's every day that you work with the kids, you know, when they open up to you and tell you stories about their histories, their trauma, when they tell you stories about who they want to be when they grow up, watching them just progress through their treatment, you know, seeing them day one and then seeing them, you know, graduating from the program and seeing the huge progress that they've made.
Yeah.
And, you know, even little achievements and little celebrations that they've had. I mean, it's every day. And even last summer, I was working at High Point, so I always gravitate back to Hillcrest. So I was working at Hillcrest last summer, and it was the same thing. It's like, you know, I was on call, so I wasn't there every day.
Yeah.
And, you know, you work with a student on a Sunday, and, like, you go back on Thursday, and it's like, wow, like, you have new skills.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing so much better than you were doing. It's just all these little things. And, you know, the way kids just want to be loved.
Right.
Kids want to be loved. Kids want to be accepted. And sometimes it doesn't show up in the most positive ways. But when you really step back and think and look and see the progress that the kids make, it's like an everyday. And there's so many students that I think about, and there's so many students that over my time at Hillcrest, I was like, wow, you know, I wonder how they're doing. They were amazing. It's funny.
Do you ever run into any of them?
So I haven't, but I was on Facebook one day, you know, just scrolling, you know how you get into the Facebook hole. And this kid is on my timeline. I was like, what's going on? Someone had shared it. Someone on my page.
Yeah.
A former Hillcrest student. I don't even know what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like, or what he's doing, like, as his career. But was on the subway singing and playing music. And it sounded so beautiful. And he, you know, people were paying him. And then, so I clicked follow. He's not my friend on Facebook, and that's what he does. Like, he's beautiful. And I never knew. I never knew that he had a beautiful voice. And I was like, oh my God. You know, so I'm happy to see that he's doing well. This was like a couple years ago.
Right.
I haven't run into them. A couple times, some have tried to message, like, hey, how are you? You know, can I borrow some money? It's always a hard ignore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think when you work with kids in a place like that, where that's where they live and that's their home, I think every time you walk into your job, into their home, it's always something new.
It seems like it's certainly rewarding, but I think there's also that element of deep emotional investment. I mean, you really, I always say people who work with children, especially and young people in a capacity that you have, it's a calling. It has to be. You can't just show up every day willy-nilly and think, I'm just here, because you have to give a part of yourself to the work.
Right.
It really requires that level of authenticity.
Right.
Because the kids will know.
Oh, yeah.
They can sniff you out.
Right. And a lot of the kids that I worked with, when I started, were city kids, and they know.
They know.
Those street smarts, they know.
They know.
So, yeah, I mean, Hillcrest is just such a great place, and they've done such great things for kids over the years. I always have, like, this little dream that they're going to, move into the community more and service the kids that are here already.
Yeah.
That's my dream for Hillcrest.
Okay. Well, it seems like a family of sorts, because, I mean, you had the prior experience with them, and then you also just went back, to have that stint. So it almost seems like maybe once you're a part of the Hillcrest family, you're always a part of it in some ways. So, you did this rewarding work. And then you made the decision to get into property management, and from the people to the buildings.
Yeah.
And what made you do that?
So I left Hillcrest because of my son.
Yeah.
I've always just worked. Like you go to work. I was raised to, you go to work and then you have fun. So I was blessed to have had those lessons in life, because I was able to take 2.5 years off, and I spent it with Nicholas.
That's great.
2.5 years, and that was my reward for working so hard since I was 16. I did all these little dead-end jobs that were just for income.
Right.
So I was really blessed to have spent that time with him. He's always been a hyper little boy. So we swimming, like you see in the movies, like reading club, library, swimming, everything. So then, he's about 2.5. Yeah. I lived on Woodlawn off of Tyler Street in my apartment. And I've had some run-ins with the law, but as an adult, not so much. Yeah. So I take pride in, like, I'm a good citizen. I behave. I don't, I'm just at home. I get this banging on my door. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So I open the door. The sheriff shows me his badge. My heart drops. He's like, here's this letter. I was like, what is this? I was like, what's going on? Like, to me, a sheriff is a police officer. I don't know the difference. To me, you're a cop.
Yeah.
So I was like, what do you mean? What happened? Like, what's going on? He's like, your landlord's evicting you. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what's happening? What's going on? And he's like, take it up with your landlord. I was like, no, you got, like, what? Like, why are you, to me, why is the police at my house? What did I do? So my landlord lived at the bottom of the hill. They were on the corner of Dalton and Tyler Street down there. So I packed up my son, got dressed, walked down the street, barged into the office with the letter. I have all the receipts of me paying my rent. Luckily, I had all, I was getting money orders, and they're all wrinkled. I bust into the office. One of the owners of the property management company is, like, sitting on his desk, his feet up. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I'm a hothead. Yeah. So, I'm pretty chill, But if you upset me, I can be a little bit of a hothead. And, sometimes bad words come out of my mouth. So some of those words came out of my mouth. And I said, what is going on? He's like, whoa, relax. He's like, you haven't paid your rent. So I said, how are you going to evict? I have a baby. Like, this is not right. I show him the pay stubs. He was like, oh, it was a simple misunderstanding then.
Wait a second.
Right. So I was like, so I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the guy that was working here, we just let him go. So I'm sorry, it was a misunderstanding. So we're looking for someone. By the way, are you looking for a job? I was like, wait a minute.
What?
I was like, you're trying to evict me. What is going on? And he apologized. He was really nice at the time. He's like, listen, I'm sorry. It must have been an error. I said, I have the proof. He's like, I hear you. I hear you. He's like, you're good. He's like, ripped up the letter. He's like, don't worry about it. You're good.
It would have been nice to have that conversation before the sheriff came to your door, but...
Right.
Okay.
He's like, you're good. Don't worry about it. And I was like, are you sure? Like, how do I know you're telling the truth? Like, you sent the police to my house. I was upset. So he said, listen. And he's, a Long Island, New Yorker. So he's like, calm down. Like, just sit down, take a load off. That's a cute baby you got there. Like, chill out. So he's like, no, seriously, do you want a job?
Yeah.
I was like, well, it's probably time for me to go back to work. I was like, what am I going to do? So he explained it to me. That was that.
You can't make this stuff up,
that was that. So then, I looked for daycares, had a hard time because that's my baby.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dump him in some center, which I did, and I had a terrible experience. It lasted 2 days. Maybe I was just being a mom, but
it
lasted 2 days.
It's hard.
And then I found her name is Becky Matos, who was on Grove Street. It was like 2 streets over from where I lived and from where the property management company was. So that's where he went, and she was just amazing. So everything was like right in the little corner.
Right.
So that was that. I started working at this company. It's like,
you got to save that story because that just doesn't happen.
You get evicted, and then they're like, oh, sorry, that's our mistake. Here, come work for us. So I did. So I said, it's time. You can't live on savings forever till he's 18. So then I was working there up until 2017. And I would get in trouble a lot because I talked to the tenants too much.
Uh-oh.
So, people would come in, and it's like, you got to collect rent. And it's like, okay, collect the rent and then send them on their way. We have a lot of units. If we don't have time, we're not therapists here. But I was. Yeah. I was like, people would come in
you couldn't resist.
I couldn't. And every time they would say, listen, you're not here to make friends. It's like, that's not, but they're not doing okay.
You still felt that within you.
Yeah. So I still, have connections with old tenants that I talk to. Sometimes they still message me. To tell me their woes of renting.
Right.
But even there, I just felt like I didn't feel right just saying, your rent is $600. Pay up. All right. See you next month. Take care. See you. Like, it just felt wrong to me.
Right.
Like, I'm taking your money.
Yeah.
You work hard for that. Like, what's going on? How's life? How's your kids? How's everything going?
Because it was more than that transactional experience. I mean, I think I always say we come to our jobs and whatever with what our point of reference, right? And so I think understanding that hard work and understanding the value of money and understanding that community sense, it's hard for you to just say, okay, just give me the money and that's it.
Right.
There's so much more.
And I saw other people who could do that, and I would look over, like, people would come in, they would have the receipt book. What's your name? Write it in. Well, how much is it? Write it in. All right, thanks. See ya. I was like, how can you do that? Like, you don't even look at them. You don't even, like, say hi. You don't, not necessarily the owner, but just people coming in and out. And that was not me. Like, hey, how's it going? Oh, last month you told me that, you were going to that birthday party. Did you, and it was just like an ongoing conversation
and
every single time.
And I think it doesn't take away from the fact that they still have to pay the rent.
Right.
It's just... It's just conversation.
Right.
It's not like the conversation is a pass to say, well, so what happened was, I can't really pay this month. I mean, you still would have to do your job because that's why you're there. But I think what you brought to it was you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I loved it. And it was good. But, as the business grew, I was the primary person in the office and, people were in and out. So was it feasible for me to sit and have conversations with 700 people in a month.
Probably not.
Right. So, I left, and right after that, I went into the school department where I worked with people.
So you got back into sort of this place where, again, you were with your people.
Right.
Well, so, you did the work within the school department, and I feel like, that definitely made sense, especially considering your journey. I know that you're a licensed realtor. And so I think maybe your work in property management inspired you to do that, or maybe there's another reason or inspiration that I don't know about.
So, I have this friend who kind of follows the real estate market, and they're not realtors or anything, but, they're kind of in the know. And last year, I think it was like May, and this all, again, just everything that happens in my life is like spur of the moment. Yeah. Oh, here I am. I walk by a building, I want to work there. I get evicted, I want to work there. So my friend was like, I think I talked about, I don't know what I said. And they're like, wow, you know your shit. You know what you're talking about. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, have you ever thought about being a realtor? And I was like, oh, that's not me, because the realtors that I did know, they're kind of fancy, they're professional. And in my head, I'm still not an adult. You know, sometimes I walk into a room and I look for an adult, like, who's the adult in here? So I was like, no, I never really thought about it.
Yeah. And
they were like, well, why don't you do it? Like, you'd be good at it. You have the experience. You know that you can talk to people. I was like, what could it hurt? Because I've kind of always followed the market just for fun. Yeah. I'm one of those that I will probably not buy a house again, but I'm on Zillow, and I'm like,
wait, hold up. You won't buy a house again? Really?
Well, maybe someday, but when I search Zillow, I don't do it with the intent to buy. I'm just it's scrolling. Like scrolling. So I'm like, oh, look, oh, wow, $1 million houses. Oh, wow, 100, wow, so it's just like, so this person was like, why don't you do it? Like, you're kind of already doing it, but now you can sell to people and you can make money. And I was like, why not? Like, I'll give it a try. So I did.
And you did.
So
and you got into the market when it was really hot.
Right. And to me, like, that wasn't the reason. Like, to me, I was like, why not? Like, I like it. I like people. I like houses. I like it. So
how did you find, I think last year especially, I think the market's going through its own thing right now where maybe it's cooling off a little bit. But how did you find working in such a hot market? How about a time to come in? You came in.
I had so many great experiences as a realtor of what to do, what not to do, the houses available. I saw so many houses in the last year.
Wow.
So I think I just had my 1-year anniversary where I was working under somebody. So when you become a realtor, you get licensed, but then you have to find an office, and an office has to take you. So I got licensed in August, but I didn't start working under somebody till September. And in the last year, I am so fortunate that I got into the market when I did, because it allowed me to look at hundreds of houses. Like, I've seen so many houses, and I think had I came in at a different time, it would have been slower. I wouldn't have had as much interest.
Right.
I worked with a couple of my friends. Thank you to them, because as a new agent, you sometimes want somebody who's seasoned. Like, you want somebody who's in the market.
Right.
And I'm so thankful for the people that gave me a chance. Mike Dean works for the city, and that was the first house that I listed all by myself last year. Oh, I love Mike. Hi, Mike. I hope you're listening. So this was, I was an agent for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And he said, I trust you. And I was like, that to me was like, I will forever be like in debt to you, because that means a lot, for someone who sells a home that means so much to them. I was like, I will do anything and everything that I can. Like, that is the highest form of compliment that I can receive. Like, nobody, I don't care what you say to me, but when you say, here is my house, and I'm trusting you with my house to sell it and, do right by me, like, that to me was like, it's
a big responsibility.
It's a big responsibility. And again, it goes back to, like, I'm going to help you. Right. Like, yes, this is a job, but I'm going to do what I can to help you.
Right.
So I'm really thankful, because I feel like all of my friends and, the brokerage that I was with just put so much trust in me. And, the market is cooling.
Yeah.
And I've seen the shift happen, and I became so entrenched in it. Like people scroll on Facebook for hours. I would scroll on Flex just to look at houses. So if somebody would call me, like I would know.
Yeah.
I'll go, are you talking about this property? Oh yeah, that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Oh, yep, that's and I think that's why I was able to be successful for the last year.
Nice.
And I'm seeing the shift. It sometimes breaks my heart. I was heartbroken a lot for my clients because I still have a few clients who are now renting apartments because I had such a hard time finding a house because they were being outbid. I didn't know this at the time when I became a realtor, but it was very, very uncommon for somebody to go and offer asking price and get the house. Everything was going over asking. People were offering more. People were paying cash. And I worked with so many clients here in the community that are financing. They're people like me and you who work, Monday through Friday and do their little side hustles.
That's right.
And they need financing.
Yeah.
And people were coming in and taking them home. So that was really hard to see so many people not being able to live their dream. But now it's getting easier. Now houses are starting to come down.
Exactly, because it can't stay at that level. It really can't. And the pendulum has to swing back to a more moderate place where the average person can be able to tap into that dream, right? Because you're right, it's so hard, and unless you're operating at such a high capacity, there's no entry point for you.
Right.
If you are on just, you're working and you just want to get a piece of that, it's hard. So I'm grateful that the market is cooling. I'm grateful for that because I think we're going to see a lot more individuals be able to really make headway and maybe not have the amount of competition that was, I joke, I say, you could put up like a door frame and like have like some dirt underneath and maybe have a roof and some sides and say it's a house and people would just pay cash for it. It just felt like people were it was just insane. The market was insane.
It was insane. I think, if we look at the history of the market, this is what it does. The rates go way, way up. Right. Nothing like the 80s where they were like 18%. So I hear people say now, like, oh, it's never been this high. Well, they have. They've actually been triple what they are right now.
Wow.
So I think if we look at the history, this is what the market does. It goes up and it goes down. And,
that's true.
Markets crash. And I don't know if we're going to crash or not. I don't know. I'm not a financial analyst, and
we don't.
But the market is a roller coaster.
It is.
We can't always stay. We can't. Where we're in a depression-like economy, and we can't always be where everything is just inflation is so high.
Absolutely, we have to have it has to have fluidity, and you're right. And I think it's just the nature of the beast.
Right. So
because our time is ticking out, and I want to get to your graduate work because you are almost wrapping up your graduate studies, Patricia.
So 3 months.
3 months.
3 months, and I'll have my master's in social work.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting. It's, taken me a long, long way to get here. At one point, I don't think my parents thought I was even going to graduate from high school. So, this means a lot to me.
Good for you.
It really means a lot to me. So
Good for you.
I'm doing it at LSU online.
Good.
It's a great program.
Good.
I'm at PHS doing my internship right now. I love that school. And I'm doing what I love every day. So come December, I hope to get I know I'm going to get my degree. I'm working hard towards it.
Yes, you will.
So I'll be there. But I'm hoping once December comes, I'll have more opportunities. I would love to work in the school department because I think that's where our future generations are, and that's the people who are going to run the city.
Right.
And the kids who are in high school right now.
That's right.
Those are our future leaders.
We have to invest in them.
We have to invest in them.
Right.
And with COVID and everything that happened, it was really hard for kids. They lost 2 years of their lives.
They did.
And I think, it's important to have adults in there who can talk to these kids. So I'm hoping, I graduate in December and then I can get a real job and I can be a grown-up.
Well, I think you're already a grown-up, Patricia, but I get it. I think I know exactly what you're talking about because especially as you get older, there's this dichotomy of thinking where you're like, yeah, I know what my chronological age is. But in your mind, you're like, but I still feel this way sometimes.
I still say when I want to grow up, this is what I want to do. And I'm almost there.
I get it.
Almost there.
I totally relate. Well, tell me, when you have your degree and you're armed with that, I mean, first of all, you have an arsenal of skills. What is your dream career? Because I know you want to work, you mentioned working in the school, but what does that look like? If there was a dream role, what would that be?
My dream, so I graduate high school, I get licensing where I need to, I have all the credentials that I need to have. I want to have 2 careers at once.
Okay.
So my dream is to be in downtown Pittsfield, have an office where I provide therapy to the youth, and I also, in the same building, have a real estate office. So
I love it.
I have 2 things going on at once. So I want to do direct care with kids.
Okay.
I want to be, a therapist, a clinician, a social worker for the kids in the community. I want to be a resource for the Spanish-speaking people who need somebody to talk to. I want my dream, unlimited money. I have all the credentials that I need. My dream is to have a center in downtown Pittsfield where I provide therapy. I have a group of people providing therapy. I have a real estate office where we provide, real estate advice.
Yes.
And we help people buy and sell their homes in the Berkshires. And then also within my little building, there's also places where people can come for resources. Right downtown where it's just so easily accessible. And because of the parking situation, there's always parking. I'll pay for the parking.
Yes.
You just pull up and the parking's already paid for. So that's my dream, is to have everything I love in one building where I could check on my, and I'll have a team. Obviously, I can't do it all on my own. So
I love it.
I'll go check on my realtors.
You sound like Patricia Molina, the mogul.
Yes. So we'll see how far I can get. And I know that, I'll have the 2 careers, but we'll see if at some point in my life
I don't think there are any limitations. You already mapped it out.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's a desire for more. Everything that you said, there's a desire for more of that. And also, let's just be clear, representation matters. And I think having a business like this, first of all, there's the entrepreneurial, opportunities for young people, even if they want to have internships and things like that. I mean, think about the possibility.
Right.
There's so much possibility.
Yeah, and that is my target market, is the kids, come work for me.
Yes.
Come, let me show you and teach you. Someone gave me an opportunity and the choice to work with a recent Pittsfield graduate, and they're thinking about becoming a realtor. I was like, I'll take them. I'll tell them everything I know, which might not be much, but I'm so invested in the youth that
I understand. You're right.
because I want to retire, and I want to know that the people who are taking over your role, my role, are competent people who, their mental health is.
You can say that again.
Yeah.
That's right. It really is all about supporting our young people and, making sure that they have the tools. And, I'm looking at the time too, making sure I have 2 more questions for you, maybe just one more, because I think that's all the time we have. But I remember when I was a young person and someone reached out and helped me, and that inspires me to help other young people. Patricia, who or what inspires you in 30 seconds or less?
I have no idea. I do not know what inspires me.
Okay.
I think I don't know, I wake up and I do it, and I see different scenarios and I see different people, and I just get inspired by random things.
And there you go.
Yeah.
And that's your inspiration. And tell me one word to describe you.
That's hard. So, unflappable hothead, because it can't be one.
Oh, boy. Oh, my goodness. All right. Thank you, Patricia. You have been awesome. Your story is so inspiring, and I hope others have been inspired by your story as well. Everyone, you've been listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsfield. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.